Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Jude, and I am making sure that everything's working still before I record. Welcome to the class, and sorry about the bumpy transition. This is my first time ever seeing this Blackboard shell myself, so I'm also getting accustomed to it. On day one, I thought it was very bizarre too. So I'm also figuring out the Blackboard shell. The shell was volunteered as an experimental shell by the previous instructor. So we are doing what we can while we move forward. Next week should be better because I'm actually used to it now, and I can clean it up before it goes visual. So, all right. So the task at hand is to evaluate this particular article right here. You can see effects of intervention on caregivers in recently placed nursing home residents, a randomized controlled trial. We have several authors, MDs and MAs and PhDs and MSWs. So it's what you call a interdisciplinary piece, and we'll start evaluating it. So for the first thing we would look at is the abstract, right? The abstract reads: many caregivers continue to provide care and support to their care recipients after institutional placement. A two-group randomized controlled trial was carried out to test the efficacy of a psychosocial intervention for informal caregivers whose care recipients resided in a long-term care facility. The intervention was delivered during the 6-month period following baseline assessment, and then follow-up assessments were carried out at 6, 12, 18 months. Primary outcomes for caregivers: depression, anxiety, burden, and complicated grief. Significant time effects were found for all three primary outcomes, showing that caregiver depression, anxiety, and burden improve over time. No treatment effects were found for these outcomes. However, complicated grief was significantly lower for caregivers in the treatment condition. So, introducing this course, one of the first things you will always read in all these research articles is the abstract. Now, what the abstract's purpose is, and this is part of the article's evaluation, what the abstract's purpose is to give you a short snippet of what the article is about, what the results of the article found, the primary variables that were tested. So essentially, what is it? How does it work? Why is it important? In a very short term point, in a very short burst. What this does is it enables researchers to quickly go through articles while they're looking for things that are relevant to them. Let's say that you want to test depression. Well, depression, there is a test of depression in this, and you can see it in the abstract, and you can quickly see it in the abstract while you're going through things. This is particularly depression for on caregivers recently placed nursing home residents. In other words, it is usually the children of their elder parents that are now placing these folks, their parents, in a nursing home. And you see these keywords here, which is good. So far, so good on this. The abstract looks pretty good. It achieves its goals. It does tell us what the article's about. It tells us what's being tested. It tells us, the kind of the methods that were happening in the article in a very short burst. So I say it's a very good abstract. So we can read the introduction. We're not going to read the introduction word for word here, but basically kind of introduces the article, talks about the background of the article. If it does that, it does a good job. Kind of introduces you to the subject. Now, a lot of the times when you're like, if you're researching a topic and you're an expert on it, then you can skip over the introduction a little bit. This is there to introduce people to the subject, but if you already know the subject, you already know the subject, so let's move forward. So methods. This is the important part when you are looking over an article, okay? The methods section should tell you how the study was done, how the study worked, and basically it gives you a recipe, kind of like baking a cake, right? So you need all specific ingredients to bake a cake. A method section will give you a specific ingredients to recreate this study. If you can successfully recreate a study from the method section, the method section was written well. So let's take a look here. We can see it was a two-group randomized controlled trial. So there we go. We have one step comparing the intervention condition. There we go. Family carers were given randomly assigned to one or two conditions. It's explaining exactly how things worked in this project, okay? You can read that on your own, but what this is about is it's recreating that. So, and of course, right here, it gives I guess it's somewhat out of place statement where the funding came from and how everything was approved. It's good. You should always have these, but it's in the middle, which is a bit weird, right? Um, So eligibility criteria is telling you like how people were recruited. Also a very vital part of creating the study. Like who are your people you're studying, okay? And how did you recruit them to study? What disqualified them? What qualified them? These were all things. And you can see here, this is self-identified. Here's the inclusion as the individuals providing the most instrumental and emotional support to the residents prior to placements. Dyads, which they define what the dyad was, is the caregiver and the resident, usually their parent-child. Were eligible for entry, and here's the eligibility requirements to join the study: was a family member, top partner, spouse, child, again, was 21 years of age or older, provided a minimum of 3 months in-home care prior to institutionalization, and spoke English was one requirement. Is planned to live in the area for at least 6 months, and the care recipient or resident had to be at least 50 years or older, had to be permanently placed within a long-term care facility, be impaired for at least 3 of 6 activities daily. Yes, dyads were exclusively a representative of the hospice program at the state of the recruitment. And the goal, inclusion, and exclusion criteria was to recruit sample caregivers who recently placed their relatives in a long-term care facility. Okay, so there's your inclusions and your exclusions. So your inclusions are right here, and your exclusions are if care recipient was enrolled in the hospice program at the time of recruitment, right? So they kind of give you like what's going on with the population in there. Participants were recruited for 16 long-term care facilities, and it's kind of giving the overview of everything. Here's your sample size. A total of 317 dyads were screened, okay? And then it kind of goes through and tells you how these were eliminated. 52 were ineligible, and 48 held without consent, leaving 217 in total. So we lost 100, and it's going to give you the step-by-step process of what ended up being the total sample size. Okay, it notes here that 89 died, 48 in control condition, 41 in interview condition were left. Well, that's the ones that died. These caregivers will continue to be followed up after the death to make sure. And it kind of details on what the intervention is. All this information is pretty darn clear so far. We know what the intervention was. We know how the people were selected. We know how the people were excluded. We know the topic. We know the variables that are being tested. So now that we have this, what's the control group? Well, the control group's right here. All right, you can read through that. The measures, how the primary outcomes are measured: depression, state anxiety, caregiver burden, and complicated grief. Each of these measures, and it's going to define how each of these measures were how they were basically defined. So this is very important too. You need to know exactly. I mean, you can say you studied depression, but you need to tell people how that depression was studied, how that depression was measured. In this one, it was a 10-item version of the depression scale. Okay, that was developed in 1977 and updated in 1999. Was used to assess the depression in both caregivers and care recipients. So it's going to go through here and define and describe each one of these variables, and this is a key part of the study methods, right? So go through here, evaluate all this. Do these definitions make sense? Are they stated? Are they clear? Can you go back? Can you follow the citations? Right? See these citations right here. Can you follow these back to the original source and find how they came about? If you want some more information about them. So all this is included, making so far a very strong article. In addition to these primary outcomes listed above, we can skip over this, and it's kind of telling you how the scales work. Again, very well. Statistical analysis is the analysis, right? And it's kind of giving you how they did their analysis. They did a chi-square test of association, while ANOVA was used for continuous outcome. So it lists that. So if you know how to do a chi-square test and you know how to do ANOVA, which I can tell you how to do that if you want, then so we can start replicating it if we need to. And replication is a very vital part of the academic process. So we know if things work, and if they work from one city to the next, for example. Let's say this was done in Pennsylvania, for example, or Maine, or whatever state, right? We could replicate it in another state. It would be original research still. But if we use these ingredients, except for the state, then we could say, oh, hey, this study also works in a different environment, which makes it even stronger. So the results, caregivers, and it talks about the results. Again, we don't have to really go into the results too hard, except for we know it doesn't work, does it not work. And that it'll tell you here if it worked or not. And in discussion, it will tell you exactly how the intervention worked. It'll go over an overview of what was effective, what was not effective. This article does that well. And then you have your references, and that's kind of how you evaluate an article. You would write down about all that, all those things, between all the things that I went over in this video. Was the abstract descriptive enough so you could pick it up if you were quickly going through it in research? And you will need to go quickly through these things in research. If you note it on the final project, um, well, you haven't seen that part of the instruction yet, probably, but you'll be zipping through about 500 articles that come down to your 10 to 12. So you need to quickly go through abstracts. Did it allow you to replicate the study through the method section? Did the method section describe the study very well? And did it talk about the people in it? Did it talk about all those things? If you can say yes to those things, the article evaluates to well, and you can write about a paragraph or two based on that. I mean, because these are like journal entries, right? You don't have to have pages and pages and pages. Just a paragraph, 2 paragraphs. You can get I lost the word. You can get an evaluation for it just fine. And that's gonna wrap up this video. Hopefully you find that helpful and kind of introducing. You'll need to evaluate every article like this, okay, that you go through, and you can do it quickly enough. I went through this in about 10-15 minutes, if that. What's the video time at right now? The video time is currently sitting at 11 minutes. So about 10 minutes, you can go through it very quickly if you know what you're talking about. And you can use this as a guidelines to evaluate the rest of your articles. So hopefully you had this was informative, and I will see you next time I record. Bye-bye.